grateful that you're here for the Utah Faith Summit and this session with Katie Ball on You Don't Have to Be Perfect to Be Good. The topics and messages that you'll hear today have the opportunity to change and possibly even save lives. For many of us here, these aren't just theories or stories, but affect us personally in either our immediate or extended families. My name is Reed Ernstrom. I'm honored to be a member of the board of directors at Pause Wellness. And I'd like to take just a second and tell you some of the services that we offer here. Pause Wellness is Cache Valley based. It is a nonprofit 501c3 organization that is entirely focused on improving lives by nurturing inner peace and preventing anxiety, depression, and harmful habits. We offer therapy for youth, teens, and adults, mental health training and instruction for businesses, medical care. We have a missionary wellness center, a youth wellness center, and 2 podcasts. Pause accepts a variety of insurance providers and bishop's pay from the LDS Church. Please visit our website and follow us on social media for ongoing information. We kindly ask that at the end of this session that you will scan the barcode that's in your notebook, and that will allow us to get the proper feedback on how we can continue to improve our services. Now with that, I would like to introduce our esteemed speaker, Katie Ball, who is a clinical social worker. Katie is driven by a profound belief in the inherent worth and potential of every individual. A master's degree in social work from Utah State University, she specializes in helping individuals cultivate a strong sense of self-esteem and self-worth. As a mental health therapist at Pause, Katie is passionate about guiding her clients on a journey of self-discovery and empowerment. She has experience in areas such as substance abuse recovery, domestic violence, sexual assault, anxiety, depression, faith building, and restructuring. Katie recognizes the pivotal role that self-esteem plays in navigating life challenges. She believes that by fostering a positive self-image and instilling a sense of worthiness, individuals can build resilience and thrive in the face of adversity. Beyond her professional endeavors, Katie finds joy in spending time with her husband and her 3 boys. They own the flower shop here in Logan. She loves to travel, try delicious new foods, and also escape with a good book. I told her that we're kind of soulmates in that respect. Would you please welcome Katie Ball?
Okay. Is this mic? Yeah, this microphone's working. I'm so happy to see so friendly faces in the audience, so I'm glad that you're all here, and I hope that you'll feel comfortable participating. I want to ask certain questions through the presentation, and I'm hoping that you guys feel comfortable enough to throw out some answers and we can have a discussion more than just me standing up here and talking the whole time. So there's 3 main areas that I want to address today. Perfectionism, you don't have to be perfect to be good. And also how to find true anchors of self-esteem, because sometimes we attach our self-esteem to things that don't really pull through for us, and we are left with anxiety and depression and some hardships. But because I work at Pause and this is the Faith Summit, I'm also going to bring faith and spirituality into it and see how they kind of all revolve around each other, how they strengthen each other, but also how these 3 things can weaken each other and kind of be barriers to us. So turn on my... Okay, so these are our goals. Hopefully by the end of today, these are the things that you'll learn a little bit more about. So what is perfectionism? How do we define it? How does it show up in our lives? And why do we need to be careful about it? Why do we need to recognize it and deal with it? how to sift through the conditions of worth that we've adopted for ourselves. As we go through life, we kind of pick up things that say, okay, this means I'm a good person. Okay, this means I'm doing a good job. And they look different to everybody, and some of them we want to keep, and some of them we want to ditch. And so I'm going to kind of talk through how to sift through those and figure out what to do with them. How to have the confidence to set boundaries. I don't know about you, but setting boundaries does not come naturally to me. It's not something I'm very good at. It's been a lifelong thing that I've been working on. And so I have some tips on how to have the confidence to set boundaries. Why, Jody Moore talked about this too, but why the way you talk to yourself matters and how powerful that is. From my perspective as a therapist, the way you talk to yourself literally changes your future and the destiny of your future. It's self-fulfilling prophecy, and it's so important. So I really want to talk about that. And then one of my favorite things to talk about, the difference between guilt and shame. I think it's really important to know that there is a distinction and to figure out how guilt can help us and shame can destroy us, and how to notice when shame is showing up in our life and to get rid of it. And then lastly, like I said, this piece of spirituality. How can we use spirituality to lead us to the person we want to be a strength and to not be something in our way? And how does it relate to perfectionism and to self-esteem? Okay, so we'll start with self-esteem. Self-esteem is basically just how we value and perceive ourselves. It's based upon our opinions and beliefs about ourselves. And like I mentioned before, your self-esteem is built from little experiences that you have gathered throughout your life. And some of them are good and help you feel like a good person. And some of them are maybe a little bit sticky inside, and they're a vulnerable piece of you and you're just not sure. And self-esteem isn't one big piece. It can ebb and flow. So in some areas of my life, my self-esteem is okay. And in other areas, it's not so good. So, it's okay if you have strengths and weaknesses, but we want to find ways to increase those weaknesses so that we know how awesome we are and we can live our life with integrity and confidence. Okay, so these are some of the ways that self-esteem influences your life and why it's important. So self-esteem can affect if you like and value yourself, how you make decisions. If you have lower self-esteem, it's a lot harder to make decisions because you're not sure what the right thing to do is and you're afraid of failure. And so you tend to be kind of paralyzed and not making decisions. And this one is one of my favorites. If you recognize your strengths. So self-esteem is kind of like when you put sunglasses on and everything looks a different color and you would swear that everything's pink, but you take them off and it's not. If you struggle with low self-esteem, it's like you can't see your strengths. It's like they're hidden from you. And it's not that you don't have them. Everyone in this room has lots and lots of strengths. But where your self-esteem is at will depend on if you can see them and feel them and live them. Self-esteem affects if you're willing to try new or difficult things. I know in my life, when I've had lower self-esteem, I tend to not take chances and not put myself out there because I'm too afraid to fail. But when I have a little bit higher self-esteem, or I try to have higher self-esteem, I'm more willing to take chances, like standing in front of all of you here today. It will affect on if you can show kindness to yourself, like Jody Moore was talking about. If you can move past mistakes without blaming yourself, again, like Jody Moore mentioned about your past self. If you can take time for yourself without feeling guilty. I know that that's something that people struggle with. And if you believe you matter and are good enough. And if you believe that you deserve happiness and to help you go for it. So just think about if you could live, what would your life look like if you could find ways to gather higher self-esteem and live like this? You would be unstoppable, right? Okay, so here's my first question that I'm hoping everyone will help discuss. How do you think spirituality affects self-esteem? Yeah.
Well, I think the spiritual aspect of knowing who we are and our relationship with God, and kind of what our first speaker, Jody, was talking about, and that you're a child of God, and so you have these inherent gifts, and so I think recognizing your inherent value and potential should affect our self-esteem.
Yeah. It's cool to anchor our self-esteem to something that doesn't change. The world is fickle, people are fickle. So if we are if our measuring stick is, am I a good person based on what my neighbor thinks or my friend thinks or my teenager thinks, it's going to go up and down a lot. But if we can tie our self-esteem to something unchangeable, like our divine worth, no matter what religion you are, or even if you don't have a religion, that spirituality of believing that there's something bigger out there than you and tying yourself to that is really powerful. Any other ideas on how spirituality and self-esteem maybe affect each other?
I think in the opposite context, if you don't have a good self-esteem, you think very poorly about yourself, and that might lead you to be very poorly about your spirituality or whatever.
Definitely. It definitely goes both ways. I think that one thing I want to talk about in this presentation is also kind of looking at how we're defining our spirituality. And we'll talk about this more later, but if your spirituality is rules and obedience and doing what's right all the time, it's harder to feel that deep, meaningful, fulfilling connection. But if your spirituality is tied to more of your divine worth and that there's something bigger out there than you and that you're not alone in this world, then that is something that helps your self-esteem. So it can go both ways. So I'm glad that you brought that up. Okay, any others before I move on? Okay. So at Pause, we believe in doing evidence-based and looking at the science. And what's really cool is that the science does back up this idea that healthy spirituality that increases mental health, and it decreases anxiety and it decreases depression. So studies have found that people with a stronger spiritual identity have a higher self-esteem. People with higher spirituality compare themselves less to others, which helps. Spirituality provides a sense of connection to a force greater than ourselves, and that helps us find that inner peace to have the confidence to take chances. Spirituality can relieve the stress of every day, especially when practiced intentionally, and I really like that piece. Spirituality increases flexibility and decreases negative emotions. So when you know that there is a power bigger than yourself out there, it's a lot easier to be flexible and go with the flow and roll with the punches and be able to kind of recover more quickly when things don't go your way and you have to go to plan B or C or D because you're not alone and there's something bigger out there. Spirituality provides a sense of purpose, peace, hope, and meaning, and spirituality can help you make sense of your experiences. And then lastly, kind of to bring it all together, spirituality increases confidence, self-esteem, and self-control. So that's why I think it's important to bring all of these together and to talk about them together. Okay, so to define perfectionism, some people are protective of their perfectionism because they're like, no, I just want to do things right. I want it to be good. I want it to be right. So there's a difference between perfectionism and healthy striving. So to kind of give you examples to help that go is that perfectionism is avoiding tasks because nothing you do will ever be good enough. Healthy striving is allowing yourself to be your best and trying to improve. Perfectionism is worrying more about others noticing your mistakes, and healthy striving is looking for feedback and guidance from others. Perfectionism is beating yourself up over other people's successes, and healthy striving is learning and getting inspiration from your role models. Perfectionism is staying stuck because nothing is ever good enough, and healthy striving is allowing yourself to grow and to learn. And I don't know if any of you will feel this way, but some people, like I said, they're protective of their perfectionism because they're afraid if they put it down and they let it go, that they'll get lazy or they won't keep going, they won't try to be better tomorrow than they were today. But science shows that it's just the opposite, actually. When you can put down those perfectionistic tendencies, you actually do better because you have less stress, and that fulfillment and joy that you feel by living your values and your integrity increases your productivity and your motivation. Okay, so my next question for the audience is, why is perfectionism harmful? How have you seen it show up in destructive ways. Yeah.
So when perfectionism is harmful and there can be too much and too perfect, then you overdo it. And when you overdo, you start affecting people around you because it's not just affecting yourself.
Yeah. The pressure seeps into everyone that loves you, right? Everyone around you. Yeah.
Unrealistic expectations for yourself and others.
Yes.
Cannot meet.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like it puts you in a tunnel of there's only one right way to do it, and it's the way that you're going to do it, and so it blinds you to like the myriad of options and opportunities around you.
Definitely.
Yeah, it causes you to over-focus on the self, and too much of that is really a bad thing, so,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah. Oh, such good answers. Yeah.
I think it creates complacency in others that are around you because they know that this person is going to make sure everything is done exactly right, so I don't even need to worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
That, you know, in essence, those are around that person all the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes we try to be perfect so nothing bad happens.
Yeah.
And that will always happen, like it's just mortality. So that is kind of harmful because you think, well, I tried my very best and bad things are still happening, you know, and
Mhm.
that we can get into that trap of like we're trying to kind of keep all the bad out. That makes sense.
Oh, it totally makes sense. Yeah. I think that's a big pull. I'm glad you brought that up, is a false sense of control. If I do everything perfectly and if I do it right, then nothing bad will happen. But then life happens and then we're like, I must be a failure. Yeah. Okay, am I missing anybody? Oh yeah.
When a person becomes, or is a perfectionist, gets to the point where they have too much self-reliance, they rely on themselves, and that makes it harder for them to trust others to get anything done, and that can develop into further problems such as relationships, whether it's physical or emotional or anything like that. Well,
Oh yeah. No, that's such a good point. I'm glad that you brought up that too. Yes.
I think it can lead to comparisons to others as well. You know, we all have our own strengths, but if you see something in somebody else that you think, man, I wish I had that, I think that can affect the way you think as well. You see that person that you think is perfect, but we all have our own stories that people do.
Yeah.
So I think when we have that somebody views your life as perfect, I think that affects us as well.
Definitely. Yeah. And why do we always compare our weaknesses to other people's strengths? Why don't we ever do it the other way around, right? We're always pitting our weaknesses against other people's strengths. Yeah.
I think it also like impedes connection. Like if you present yourself as this perfect person, then it's like people don't feel like they can relate to you, they can't open up to you, you know, and I think that's really important because it just creates walls.
Mm-hmm. I like that. What's funny to me is whenever someone comes over to my house and it's not clean, I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like it's a mess. And I'm just like so worried about what they're thinking of me. But when I go to someone else's house and it's a mess, I'm like, I love you so much. Like I'm just so thankful that you're real and like that I can see you're real and I feel connected to them and I feel like they love them, but I don't feel the same way about myself. And that's interesting. I think it does impede connection. When I can really see someone good and bad, that's when I feel like, oh, I got you. You've got me. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I can only speak for myself, but sometimes what happens for me when I expect perfection from myself, I then am less willing to be okay with those around me who are not being perfect, especially my children. And I expect more perfection from them. And when I'm not, I don't know why it is that I'm unable to give that to myself or them sometimes when we know it's not possible, but you expect something more and then it just kind of spirals.
Yeah. Another way it kind of impedes relationships, right? It's not just us, but it bleeds out. Yeah. These are awesome. Yeah.
I just wonder when I see addiction sometimes way more perfectionism, because when people can't be that perfect person that they want to be, and they go to harmful coping mechanisms, which a lot of there is addiction.
Definitely. Yeah. Perfectionism, science does show that perfectionism will lead to anxiety, depression, and addiction and suicidal thoughts. So, okay. So you guys brought up such great points. Some of the top ones that I kind of wanted to share with you of why perfectionism is harmful. So this is the first one. Perfectionism makes it all or nothing thinking. Either you're perfect or you're a failure. There's nothing in between. There's no gray area. So if you think about it, if we take out, oh look, I know how to use a laser pointer. If we take out the middle, it doesn't exist, right? It's one or the other. But then realistically, does perfectionism actually exist? Is that attainable? No. So then what do we do in our life? We cross this out. So then what choice do we have? Failure. Over and over and over again, we do this to ourselves, and then that is why it leads to anxiety, depression, like suicidal thoughts, addictions, sadness, low self-esteem. So that's, I think, the biggest reason we need to be careful about perfectionism is because we are all good and we all live mostly somewhere right here. But perfectionism makes us think that we live over there. This is a quote by Brene Brown that I really like. It says, "Wherever there is perfectionism, shame is riding shotgun and fear is in the back seat." And think about how that would feel. If you live your life with shame next to you all the time, with fear backseat driving, talking about every decision you make, every look, oh, they don't like you, or oh, you're looking kind of fat today, or like you totally bombed that, that's exhausting and it's so sad and it's really going to tear you down. So we want to kick them out of the car, boot them out. They're not welcome in your car anymore, okay? Brene Brown also talks about perfectionism as a shield. She calls it the 20-ton shield. So what do you guys think perfectionism is shielding you from? Or what are you trying to protect yourself from with perfectionism? I can give you the answers. Okay, so this is what Brene Brown says. She says, perfectionism is not the same thing as striving to be your best. Perfectionism is the belief that if we live perfect, look perfect, act perfect, we can minimize or avoid the pain of blame, judgment, and shame. It's a shield. It's a 20-ton shield that we lug around thinking that will protect us, when in fact, it's the thing that's really preventing us from flight. And I think that that's true. None of us wake up and say, you know, I'm going to ruin my life today, so I'm going to be a perfectionist. That's a good idea. Really, we have these insecurities and vulnerabilities and areas of low self-esteem, and it feels natural to guard and to self-protect and to try to prevent ourselves from getting hurt. And so we build this shield, and some of our shields are bigger than others. But it's time to put it down, because I think, as we've illustrated, it feels like it's leading us in a good place of protection, but it's really destroying us. And not only does that shield keep you from flying, it hides you. It keeps you from being seen. Because if you're always hiding behind the shield, people can't actually see you. And one of the core needs of people on this earth is to be seen. Like, have you ever had someone truly see you? Can you remember how good that felt and how needed that was? And if we're always hiding, then we can't be seen. Okay, so this is Brene Brown too. She's awesome. I worship her. She says that understanding the difference between healthy striving and perfectionism is critical to laying down the shield and picking up your life. Research shows that perfectionism hampers success. In fact, it's often the path to depression, anxiety, addiction, and life paralysis. So I guess I just wanted to challenge you with this. If you have a shield, let's work on putting it down. Let's figure out how to do that, because you're worth it. There's so much good inside all of you. I mean, we don't need to hide anymore. Okay, so the next part of this whole process that I wanted to talk about is the difference between guilt and shame. And again, I love this. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. So does anyone have an idea on what is the difference between guilt and shame? Yeah?
Guilt's when you mess up and you feel bad, but you move on. Shame is when I'm a loser, I screwed up, and you just start tearing yourself down.
Yes, exactly. So guilt is a healthy emotion. It's adaptive. Like she said, you get back up, it's flowing, it moves forward, and it's helpful. It helps us learn from our mistakes, and it helps us find a way to keep going. It's also a sign that our moral compass is working and that we're trying to align our life with our integrity and our values. It means that we're showing effort. It means that we're trying. If we learn to work with guilt, it can be a tool for growth. So for example, if we listen to guilt when it's telling us to stretch, like if there's an opportunity for self-improvement or a relationship improvement, that is what's going to help us in healthy striving. So guilt is healthy striving. It's trying to be better tomorrow than you were today, but without the shame of tearing us down. So I'm a visual person and I like to picture things like this. So to me, guilt is like this. It's like a map and you're like, okay, this is who I want to be. And sometimes guilt's like, I know you want to be here, but did you know that you're here? And I just want to remind you of the path that you're on and where you want to go. So let's get back on the path and let's keep going to where you want to go, to your destination. And like this comic says, you are here, but we want to go a different direction. That's guilt. Shame, like she mentioned, is a feeling that you're worthless and that you're not enough. And it's like the Taylor Swift song, it's me, hi, I'm the problem, it's me. And there's 3 main lies of shame. You're worthless, you're helpless, and everything is hopeless. Where's the movement in that? Where's the flexibility? Where's the redemption? There isn't any, right? Which means that you're stuck. So if we visualize this is kind of how I picture shame. It's a dead end. The path is gone. Give up. You know, you've messed up so many times. It's just not worth trying anymore. You're never going to get it right. You always do the wrong thing. It's just not going to work out, right? That's what shame tells us, and the path ends. And we don't want to do that. We want that evolving guilt that helps us say, okay, I'm moving forward. I'm striving to be better. The perfectionism is shame, right? It's like that graphic I showed you. Either you're perfect or you're a failure. That's a dead end. But guilt is more of that, like, it's get back on the path, keep going, keep moving, that healthy striving. Okay, this is just a joke that I wanted to put in here. Shame and perfectionism are like the BFFs that always go to the bathroom together. They can't do anything without each other. They're always together. So if you're sensing shame in your life, perfectionism is probably there. If you're sensing perfectionism in your life, shame is there. They don't go anywhere without each other. They're connected at the hip. They're like the mean girls. They go everywhere together. Okay, so this is the next part where we're going to sift through our conditions of worth. What do we keep? What do we let go? How do we put down that shield? So here's my next question. What makes someone a good person? What do you guys think? When you meet someone and you just think they're awesome, what characteristics do they have? Yeah.
I think like honesty and integrity.
Honesty, integrity, yeah. Anyone else? Yeah.
Someone that allows themselves and others to grow.
Oh, that's a good one. I love that one. Yeah.
They're kind.
Kind. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like somebody that is authentic, that I see that it makes me feel like I can be myself around them.
Oh yeah, definitely. Okay, so think about this. I think we all agree that everything that people said, we're like, yeah, that's a good person. That's a person I want to be with. Okay, if you were to think about what do I have to do to be a good person? Would it be being authentic? Would it be allowing myself to grow? Would it be being kind to myself? Do we have different conditions of worth for ourselves than we do for other people? We usually do. And I think that that sets us up for some disaster and some failure sometimes. So here's an activity that we can do. Everyone has shoulds, right? And they're just these thoughts that we have in our head that come like, I should, they should, people should. And we all have them. Everyone that walks the planet has shoulds. And I want you, as we talk about this, think about some of the thoughts that you have often that have to have the word should in them. So, like I said, everyone lives with shoulds, and they're not all bad. So for many, their shoulds are positive and fulfilling. Meeting one's moral obligations and living your values and your integrity, it gives your life purpose and meaning, and it brings you joy. When we do the right thing, we feel good about ourselves, right? But then with others, shoulds are not positive. They're pressured, they're suffocating, they're strangling, and their inner shoulds are like a source of emotional suffering. So how do we tell the difference, right? So here are some of the most common shoulds. When I got these from the internet, but I would also agree in therapy, these come out a lot. So if I read these, think about if any of these are things that you think. I should always be happy. I should always be in control. I should never be angry. I should always be productive. I should always put other people's needs above my own. I should not dislike anyone. I should always be giving. I should always be selfless. I should not make mistakes. And I should always do the right thing. All right, I'm pretty sure all of us are like, ooh, yep, that's me. So this is how we tell the difference. If you want to do an activity at home or right now, write down your shoulds that come to your mind and then ask yourself these questions. Is it realistic? Is it rigid or unyielding? And is it devoid of compassion? And if you can answer yes to any of those three questions, then it's the strangling, suffocating kind of shoulds that aren't really helping you. But if it's not those things, then it's the positive, life-fulfilling, striving to be better kind of shoulds. So I'm going to go back to this one that I read that I think that we can all agree on. Look over them and ask yourself, are they rigid? Are they unyielding? Are they unrealistic? Are they devoid of compassion? Yeah. So I think that bringing that all together, like I said, our conditions of worth for someone else are different than the conditions of worth for ourselves. And if we can be kind to ourselves and allow ourselves to grow and all the wonderful things that you said, we can still have shoulds, we can still have purpose, we can still have goals and values that we live by, but we just want to make sure they're not suffocating us and like pushing us down and hurting us, right? The other thing I wanted you to notice is how many of these shoulds that most people experience have to do with either how we are perceived by others or how we relate to others or relationship with others, right? Like, I should always be happy because I don't want to be a burden for anyone. I should always be in control because I don't want to burden anyone or like have a weakness that they have to pick up from. Oh, I don't want to get angry because people might think I'm a bad person or they might think I'm mean. I should always be productive so people know I'm not lazy. And I should put other people's needs above my own so they like me. And I shouldn't dislike anyone because that would cause conflict and I don't want conflict. I should never be selfish. I should be giving. I shouldn't make mistakes. I should do the right thing. Can you see how much emphasis we're putting on our relationships with others and trying to be perfect and not be seen? So this is another way that shield comes into place. So how do we undo this, right? How do we show up authentically and give ourselves room to grow and be kind to ourselves, all the things that you said? And the answer is boundaries. Everyone hates that word, I know, but we're gonna get through it. Do you have
Sorry,
some?
I do
Yeah.
something just on the shoulds. I know Albert Ellis, kind of a father that would tell you to stop shooting on yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's like something to remember, like that we need to maybe take a step back and not use that word so much. Because it tears us down and it doesn't help us, it doesn't build us up.
Right. Did you have something?
Yeah, it was always or never. And I think those are like absolute words that
it's impossible to be always or never. And so you have to just like, I should try, or I should, like give yourself some space. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not always or never. It was very anyway. I don't know.
I'm so glad you brought that up because it's true. And that's something I tell my clients too, that if you find yourself thinking the words always or never, a little light bulb should go up that you're not thinking healthy and that you're being mean to yourself. And like that graphic where the middle was crossed out and they were like, okay, perfectionism was crossed out. Always and never is one of those ways that we're taking all of our choices away from us, and the only choice we have is failure, because we're not always going to be something or never going to do something. We all live in the middle, and it's okay. It's messy and it's beautiful and it's normal, and we just need to accept it, right? Okay. Okay, here's my next question for you guys. What would you say is the definition of selfish if you had to define it? Yeah.
Greedy.
Greedy. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like taking more than your fair share.
Yeah, taking more than your fair share. Mm-hmm.
It's not thinking of others.
Not thinking of others. Yeah. Did you have one too?
When your actions affect others in a negative way.
Okay. Yeah, I think perfect. That's what most people think. Most people will say the definition of selfish is like doing what's best for you and not thinking about others, right? But if you look at the definition of selfish and like look at it from a therapy point of view, the definition of selfish is doing what's best for you with no regard for others. So if you can adopt and think about selfish that way, that means that you can come up to a situation and you can say, okay, here's a problem, here's a conflict, I have needs, they have needs. What are we going to do about this? You can think about others and you can still choose what's best for you. And that's not selfish. And I think that kind of gets in the way of why it's hard for a lot of people to set boundaries, is because they're like, I don't want to be mean. I don't want to put my needs above others. I don't want to be like needy or demanding, but it's okay. Like, we have just as much worth as anyone else. And so if we know that we can have regard for others and still choose ourselves, and that's not selfish, that will give us the confidence to set boundaries. So boundaries are really important, and they help our mental health, they prevent burnout, they increase trust and respect in relationships, they help you avoid resentment and emotional exhaustion. They help you with your identity, they define who you are, what you want, your values, and they give you the space to be yourself, to grow, to stumble, to make mistakes, and to be forgiven. And it helps build self-esteem and independence. Okay, I wanted to talk about like Christ and spirituality and boundaries, because I don't know if any of you have struggled like this, but I think it's really common to sometimes get confused about Christ and what being Christ-like means in relation to boundaries. So here's some true principles. I'm not saying these aren't true, but these are things we hear all the time. Turn the other cheek, be a peacemaker, love your enemies. It's better to give than to receive. He who loses his life shall find it, and to forgive others. Now these are true. We should do these. I'm not saying we shouldn't. But if we define selfish as putting my needs above others, and then we kind of connect that to this idea of who Christ was, can you see how that might set us up for exhaustion and like hard time setting boundaries and just feeling lost? So I think that Christ gave us these principles to teach us that treating others harshly or cruelly is not the way. I don't think he gave these to us to say, don't have boundaries, don't care about yourself, don't ever put your needs first. And I have a few examples of times that Christ set boundaries in the Bible. So the first one is in Luke 5. But so much more went there of fame abroad him, and great multitudes came together to hear and be healed by him. And he withdrew himself into the wilderness and prayed. Okay, so I read this scripture, but I never really realized what that must have felt like to him. Can you imagine walking through hundreds of people or thousands of people and them calling your name and like needing you and wanting you and seeing sick people and seeing people who need you, and just but also knowing that you're depleted and like you're kind of empty. And he withdrew himself to pray to recharge. And I really loved what this pastor said. He said, in the early years of my ministry, like other Christian leaders, I had a problem feeling guilty if I set boundaries. I thought I had to say yes to what people felt they needed from me. I tried to people please and make them happy. I never wanted anyone to be disappointed or upset with me. To me, this seems selfish or not nice to say no to people with hurts and needs. Jesus had personal needs that he put priority on, sometimes even over the needs of other people, and he did so without feeling guilty. And this is the best part. Jesus lived in a rhythm of life that not only kept him free from burnout, but far beyond that, it kept him full of God, full of grace and truth, and therefore ready and able to be compassionate, generous in his response to people, their needs, and crisis situations. Can you see how setting boundaries actually helps us be even better and more available to people? Yeah.
I just had a thought, because sometimes I have a hard time getting to bed if my teenager's like sleeping or something.
Oh, yeah.
And I was thinking about when Christ was on the boat sleeping when there was this raging storm, and I'm like, I was thinking that if he had a human body that he could sleep too.
Yeah. It is interesting, right? Yeah.
I think when setting boundaries, one thing that's helpful is to change the perspective from now or further into the future. So Christ has an eternal perspective, and so some of the things that we think that we need right now are actually for our benefit and learning. For a child who wants candy, we think that the thing that we can do is give them candy will make them happy and they'll like us and everything will be good. But that may not be the right thing, because if we look at the perspective and we take that time out, then maybe we're not doing the right thing and we need to set our boundaries.
Yeah, I love that. I think I'll go through the next ones kind of quickly because I'm running out of time, but this is the story of where the crippled man comes up to him on a Sunday and wants to be healed, and everyone's like, you can't heal him on a Sunday, and the Pharisees get really mad at him and like want to come after him, and Christ heals him anyway. And these are the 3 boundaries that he set there. Jesus defended the crippled man's worth and stood up for him despite the consequences. He knew the worth of a soul and stood up for him. He followed what he knew to be true against the Pharisees' wishes. He led with integrity and didn't worry what others thought of him. And then when he knew that the Pharisees were coming, he withdrew himself from them, which means that we can withdraw ourselves from people who are not treating us well. Jesus did it. If someone is being mean to us, we can walk away. We don't have to take it. And Christ showed us how to set that boundary. The last one is when he finds out about Mary, Martha's brother, and he waits to come. And I love this is the same pastor. He said, why did Jesus say no to coming immediately? And he said, so a bigger yes could occur. Because Jesus waited, he performed the miracle of raising Lazarus from the dead. When we practice boundaries by saying no with love, we allow bigger yeses to unfold in our lives. In this way, setting boundaries is not mean or selfish. They are the conduit for God's purpose to enter the world. So saying no so we can say yes to bigger yeses. And just to kind of close this up, Jesus navigated the delicate balance between assertiveness and compassion. It's crucial to understand that setting boundaries and being assertive align with Christ's teachings, which advocate for both selflessness and standing up for what's just. So I hope that we can strive for that, to navigate the delicate balance between assertiveness and compassion, and understand that spirituality can help us do that. Okay, I think since Jody Moore talked about talking nice to yourself, I might I'll just summarize this. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out what to cut out. So shoulds, shame, selflessness, and spirituality. That's kind of what we covered, right? They all interconnect to each other, and they can all influence each other for good, or they can tear each other down. So be mindful of how these are playing a part in your life. Okay, so how you talk to yourself matters. This is the idea that thoughts create feelings, feelings create behavior, and behavior then reinforces that thought. So if I have the thought, I'm not good enough, that's going to create feelings of like shame, sadness. I'm probably going to be really shy, embarrassed. And then those feelings are going to dictate what behavior I do, which means I'm going to try to make myself small. I'm not going to go to that social gathering. I'm not going to do that thing that's outside my comfort zone. I'm going to be afraid of failure, so I'm just going to not like try. But because I'm not trying and experiencing successes and making connection, that reinforces the thought that I'm not good enough. And you can see how that happens. So here's some of the things that people think a lot. People won't like me. I'm not smart enough to do that. I'm not talented enough. I'm ugly. My favorite that I say is I'm a dumpster fire. That's my go-to. Okay, this is what we want to do though, is we want to reverse it. And we can. This is the cool part about this, is that it doesn't have to stay that way. Okay, so let's change this thought to, instead of I'm not good enough, what if it's my imperfections are human and I'm still enough? What if we could think that? How would that influence what feelings I have? I would be a little bit more brave. I'd be a little bit more confident. I would have some inner peace that I could carry with me into decisions. So that would dictate different behavior, right? I might take that chance. I might go to that scary social gathering. I might do something outside my comfort zone. And chances are I'm going to make connection and I'm going to see some success from my efforts, which is going to reinforce that thought that, yeah, I'm human. I have weaknesses. Sometimes I'm going to fall on my face, and sometimes I'm going to really do good, and I'm still enough. I'm still enough. And it's going to reinforce that. So I guess just to close with the last thing that will help you with getting shame out of your life and getting rid of perfectionism and helping your self-esteem be where you want it to be is catch your thoughts. If you notice you're saying mean things to yourself, catch it and change it and flip it. And that is going, like I said before, it will change your future. It will change your destiny because it's self-fulfilling prophecy. If we can say nice things to ourselves, it will change how we feel, which will change how we act, which will reinforce our thoughts. And like I said, then you'll be unstoppable. Okay, I think I'm going to end by this. So I'm going to read out some of my favorite affirmations, and I want you to think about them, and if any of them speak to your soul, I want you to write them down. I want this to be your motto, okay? Do I have 3 minutes, Christine? 2? Okay. Before I read them, I'll tell you a really quick story of how this changed my life. So about 7 years ago, when it was popular to pick a word of the year instead of like a New Year's resolution, I was like, hey, I'm going to pick the word enough. And I have 2 versions of this. On the one hand, I'm going to start believing enough. I'm smart enough. I'm pretty enough. I'm skinny enough. I'm good enough. I'm good enough. I'm going to just believe it for once, right? And mind you, I'm like late 30s at this point, right? I was late to the game. But, and then on the other hand, I was kind of a people pleaser and a tendency to be a doormat. And I was just pretty unhappy, struggling with a lot of anxiety and depression, like I've talked about. So I was like, okay, enough. Like, I'm going to start having boundaries, and I'm going to stop letting people walk all over me. So at the beginning of the year, I was like, hey, these are 2 separate goals. And I worked on them. And at the end of the year, I realized they were the same goal. Because until I believed that I was enough, I didn't have the confidence to say enough. But just like behavior reinforces thoughts, when I started making boundaries and sticking up for myself and navigating like Christ did the difference between compassion and assertiveness, it reinforced that thought that I am enough. And I realized that it was the same goal. So these affirmations can be really powerful in your life. Okay, I will read a few of my favorite because I think I only have like 30 seconds left. But mistakes are growth opportunities. Flaws are not inadequacies. I don't have to be perfect for people to like me. It's okay for me to say no and set boundaries. There's more than one right way to do something. I can't control everything, and that's okay because I have the resources to cope. Everyone needs to rest, including me. Progress, not perfection, and I'm imperfect and I'm still enough. So I hope that this helps you get rid of shame in your life, put down that shield of perfectionism, embrace spirituality and self-esteem in your life to strive to be better tomorrow than you are today and love yourself on the journey. Thanks.